What happens when a beloved country star walks into what should be a normal morning show appearance, only to find himself in the middle of a growing storm that no one saw coming? Blake Shelton thought he was simply stopping by the Today Show studio for another light chat with Jenna and the crew. But what unfolded next left everyone in the studio stunned and viewers at home glued to their screens. Before we dive into this dramatic encounter, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because this story is about to get intense. The morning began like any other at the Today Show studios in New York City. Blake Shelton arrived around 7:30 a.m., coffee in hand, wearing his usual relaxed smile as he greeted the production team. He was there for a standard promotional segment to talk about his latest album and upcoming tour. Nothing unusual, just another stop on the media circuit for one of country music's biggest names. Jenna Bush Hager was already in the studio reviewing her notes with the producers when Blake walked in. She had interviewed him several times before, and their chemistry had always been easy and fun. The audience loved seeing Blake's laid-back, down-to-earth charm, and Jenna had a natural way of bringing out his humor. Today's segment was supposed to be no different, a cheerful chat about his music, maybe some stories from The Voice, and a plug for his new projects. But as Blake took his seat, adjusting his cowboy hat and testing his microphone, he noticed something was off. The usual pre-show buzz felt a little tense. Jenna's smile didn't quite reach her eyes, and she seemed distracted as she shuffled through her cue cards. Over in the corner, producers whispered among themselves, occasionally checking their phones with worried looks. Blake picked up on it immediately. He had been in this business long enough to know when something wasn't right. The casual small talk between him and Jenna felt forced, like there was something unspoken hanging in the air. "Everything okay over there, Jenna?" Blake asked, his Oklahoma drawl cutting through the tension as he leaned back in his chair. "You look like somebody just told you your dog ate your homework." Jenna gave a quick laugh, but it sounded strained. "Oh, you know how it is, Blake. Just making sure we get through everything today. We've got a lot to talk about." The way she emphasized "a lot to talk about" made Blake's brow crease slightly. In all his years doing interviews, he'd learned to recognize when a host was gearing up for a curveball. This felt like one of those moments. The stage manager called for places, and soon the cameras were rolling. Jenna's on-air persona switched on immediately, bright, polished, and full of energy. She welcomed Blake warmly, and the first few minutes went as expected. They chatted about his music, joked about his coaching on The Voice, and Blake shared a funny story about his latest fishing trip back home in Oklahoma. But then, Jenna's tone shifted ever so slightly. "Blake," she said, "I want to talk about something a little more serious. If that's okay?" Blake's smile faltered, but he nodded. "Sure, Jenna. Go ahead." "There have been some recent comments you made during a radio interview that have been getting a lot of attention online. You mentioned that some newer country artists are, quote, losing touch with what country music really means. Can you explain what you meant by that?" The question hit Blake like a splash of cold water. He'd done countless interviews lately and remembered expressing his opinions about the direction of country music, but he didn't recall saying anything controversial. His media instincts kicked in, but beneath the surface, he was puzzled. "Well, Jenna, I think maybe some context got lost there," Blake said carefully. "I love seeing new artists come into country music and add their own style. That's what keeps it fresh," but Jenna wasn't letting it go. She leaned forward slightly, her expression focused. "But you specifically said that some artists are more focused on their social media than their songwriting. You said, and I quote, that some of these new artists wouldn't know real country if it bit them in the behind. Those are strong words, Blake." Blake's jaw tightened. He remembered now the Nashville radio chat where he'd spoken openly about the commercialization of country music. But the way Jenna was framing it made it sound like he had attacked specific people, which wasn't true. "Hold on a second, Jenna," he said, his voice firm. "You're taking those comments out of context and making them sound a lot harsher than they were." The studio air seemed to buzz. The producers exchanged worried looks, and even the camera operators shifted nervously. But Jenna pressed on. "I'm just reading from the transcript, Blake, and since that interview, a few artists have responded online saying they felt personally targeted. How do you respond to that?" Blake's patience was thinning. He'd worked hard to keep his temper in check over the years, but this felt unfair. "You know what, Jenna?" he said, leaning forward. "I've been doing this for more than 20 years. I've always tried to support new artists. If someone wants to take a general comment and make it personal, that says more about them than me." The tension in the studio thickened. What was supposed to be a friendly morning chat had turned into a live confrontation. Jenna knew she was treading dangerous ground. But something, maybe the producers in her ear, maybe her own drive, pushed her to keep going. "But Blake," she said, "when you have such a big platform, don't you think you need to be careful about how your words might be taken? You're not just anyone, you're Blake Shelton. What you say carries weight." Blake's eyes hardened and his easygoing smile disappeared. "So now you're telling me how to use my platform?" he said, his voice rising just enough to grab everyone's attention. "I've been using my platform to lift other artists up since before some of these people even thought about picking up a guitar." The exchange was heating up fast. Jenna tried to keep her composure, but her voice trembled slightly. "I'm not telling you how to use it, Blake. I'm asking you to take responsibility for the impact of your words. Some newer artists say they feel like they have to defend their authenticity because of what you said." Blake let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "You know what's not fair, Jenna? Having my words twisted just to create drama. I was talking about industry trends, about the music losing its heart. But sure, let's make it sound like I was attacking people." Jenna glanced at her notes again. "But surely you can understand how artists like Morgan Wade and Parker McCollum might feel targeted." The mention of names was like throwing gas on a fire. Blake's face darkened. "Wait just a damn minute," he snapped. "I never said a word about them. Morgan's talented as hell, and Parker's got more country soul in one song than most artists do in a career. What you're doing right now, this right here, is exactly what's wrong with how things work today." Jenna hesitated. She knew she might have gone too far, but there was no turning back. "I'm just trying to understand your perspective, Blake. When you say things like that, how are people supposed to take it?" "They're supposed to use a little common sense." Blake shot back, his calm exterior finally cracking. "I was talking about fake formulaic stuff, songs with no heart. I wasn't calling out real artists who care about their craft. But I guess nuance doesn't trend online, does it?" The studio was dead silent. Even the crew members were frozen, realizing they were witnessing something that would be replayed for days. Jenna tried to regain control. "Blake, I understand you're upset." "Upset?" Blake interrupted, standing up and yanking off his microphone. "I'm not upset, Jenna. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed that someone I thought was a friend would ambush me like this on live TV. I came here to talk about music, not to get trapped in a setup." "Are you just going to walk out?" Jenna said, her voice rising. "You're really going to storm off instead of finishing the conversation?" Blake stopped mid-step, turned, and faced her with an icy stare. "An adult conversation," he said slowly, "would have been you calling me ahead of time and asking if I wanted to address this. Not blindsiding me and trying to make me look like a bully." "I'm just doing my job, Blake," Jenna said, her cheeks flushed. "Sometimes that means asking tough questions." Blake laughed, a cold, empty sound. "Your job used to be about real conversations, not clickbait moments. But hey, congratulations, Jenna. You got your viral clip." The silence that followed was suffocating. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every second of the standoff. Blake shook his head and began walking off set. "You know the real shame? I had a lot to share, about my album, about new artists I'm mentoring, about a charity project. But we wasted everyone's time chasing fake drama." As he neared the exit, Blake turned one last time. "And for the record, Jenna, some of the best country music I've heard in years is coming from younger artists. But I guess that doesn't make for good TV, huh?" "Blake, wait!" Jenna called after him, her voice trembling but still defiant. "If you walk away now, doesn't that just prove you can't handle being questioned?" That was it. Blake stopped, turned slowly, and met her gaze with a quiet intensity that chilled the room. "You want to talk about handling things? You ambushed me, twisted my words, and now you're questioning my integrity. That's not journalism, that's tabloid nonsense." The words hit like a slap. Jenna's composure finally broke. "Tabloid nonsense? Blake, I've been a journalist for 15 years. I've covered real stories, Wars, disasters, elections. Then act like it, Blake shot back. Act like a journalist instead of someone fishing for views. A real journalist would have let me explain my side before turning it into a circus. At that moment, the interview had completely fallen apart. It wasn't a segment anymore, it was a live argument. You know what, Blake? Jenna snapped. Maybe the issue isn't how I presented your words. Maybe the issue is what you said. Blake stared at her, and for the first time his anger softened into something that looked like sadness. Jenna, I've always respected you. I've always thought you were one of the good ones. But right now I don't recognize you. This isn't who you used to be. Jenna blinked, clearly shaken, but before she could answer, Blake held up his hand. I don't know if this came from you or from your producers, but this isn't journalism. This is character assassination disguised as an interview. And I'm not going to play along. He placed his microphone gently on the coffee table. I came here excited to talk about my music and the amazing artists I'm working with. Instead, I got ambushed by someone I trusted. That's on me. But I won't make it worse by staying. Blake, please, Jenna said quietly. Can we just reset and start over? Blake paused, then shook his head. Some things you can't just reset, Jenna. Some things change everything. With that, he turned and walked off the set. The cameras kept rolling for a few seconds longer, capturing Jenna's stunned face as she realized what had just happened. The studio descended into chaos. Producers rushed onto the set. The show cut to an emergency commercial break. Within minutes, clips of the explosive exchange were all over social media. Blake's team fielded calls from every major outlet, while the Today Show's PR department scrambled to contain the fallout. But perhaps the most human moment came afterward. As Blake was leaving the building, a young production assistant stopped him shyly. Mr. Shelton, I heard that radio interview, she said softly. I don't think you said anything wrong. What happened in there? It wasn't fair. Blake's expression softened. Thanks, sweetheart, he said kindly. That means a lot. Just remember, in this business, context is everything. Don't ever let someone twist your words. As Blake stepped out into the New York morning, the weight of what had just happened started to sink in. The confrontation would be talked about for weeks, an unforgettable moment in live television. So, what do you think? Was Blake right to walk away and call out what he saw as ambush journalism? Or was Jenna just doing her job by asking tough questions? Hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments what you think. Was Blake justified, or did he go too far?